name's Jeff Sowell, and I've been in tech for about 30 years. And I've been in roles such as a CISO. I was with Ericsson North America as the group counterpart to the Chief Product Security Officer. And today I run BlueRadius Cyber. One thing I've done with BlueRadius Cyber is found more innovative ways to do risk assessment and essentially stand up a security program that will do continuous compliance, if you will, through using telemetry and AI. And that's kind of what this presentation is about today. Move slides. So one thing I found, well, let me just start by saying, everything in the kind of give you the who, what, why, when, and where of the discussion. I've kind of always liked to look at security through the who, what, why, when, and where from like a security architecture perspective. So everything in the next 30 minutes is going to serve one goal, and that's to essentially raise the organization's security posture on a continuous basis. So not just not just from an audit perspective, but to actually elevate the security posture from a program perspective. So, this is the who is really focused around the leader who's accountable, who owns the risk and machines. And the what is the risk program or the security program that is running live telemetry for systems that an organization already operates. Why? Well, we all know why. Around breaches, there's that argument around, do audits actually make a company secure? We can get into that a little more. But really, the when piece is around the continuous assessment. In getting actual results within 90 days or sooner. And then it's really about the stack you already run. One thing to make note of is that, this works great from a cloud native environment. It does work with hybrid or on-prem. There's just added things you need to do from like a collector standpoint to really get it dialed in on-prem. Okay, so I'm sure everyone in this room is, if you've been in security long enough, you've been through an audit, and you understand the challenges of getting the right level of attestation to the auditors. It takes away from your day job. Depending on whatever audit cadence you're on, it can be a real goat rodeo, if you will. You're getting screenshots, you're collecting things in many different places, you're impeding other people's work. And then the audit comes and they give you your findings, and leaders take their accolades about the finding results if they're good, and if not, then there's a little bit of a push to remediate things. So one thing let me just go to the next slide first. So audits are great because that's when an audit time comes, there seems to be a lot of movement around security. Leadership actually kind of takes note. Resources are deployed. There's visibility, and there's what I think kind of a false sense of security or assurance because hey, we passed this audit. But as we know, two of the most studied breaches would say otherwise. The Target breach, if you all remember that, about 10 years or so ago. It probably was longer than that. They passed their PCI assessment just weeks before their, it was 2013, it's right there. PCI assessment just weeks before that breach. Equifax had a lot of policies, they probably had a lot of procedures, but they, operationally around hygiene, were lacking. And so the audits were fine, they passed, but the telemetry there, or the results of that audit didn't really provide the necessary assurance they needed to prevent a breach. So that said, let me move down the slide deck here. So with cloud native and different tooling in place, the telemetry exists, the audit logs exist from a system standpoint. So, when it comes to standing up a program, one thing I found is it's very challenging to get the right data at the right time to answer, the questions that leadership typically wants. They want metrics. Essentially, what they're looking for is assurances that, the company's secure. And there's a lot, without going directly to the source of the information, it's being filtered through people, and a lot of that busy work kind of makes up a security leader's day-to-day job, which is, I think their time can be better spent actually focused on the right things and the things that are priority. But that's really based and left to the leader based on their experience, their judgment, and that's really what their value is to the organization. But given AI and the telemetry at hand, if you bring that leader's decision making ability and their experience, I think that can be a force multiplier to the role, as we're seeing in a lot of different areas and functions with AI, because of the pattern recognition, right? So which kind of moves into the creating a baseline. So looking at all the data and trying to get an understanding of, hey, what is this? What is the kind of status quo here? What's the baseline from a security perspective? And what areas are needing the most focus? AI is great for this. The machine learning, pattern recognition, kind of just getting a general sense of what's normal for the organization, and that comes in handy down the road, I'd say, in when standing this type of program up, because you go into an organization, you try to get that security baseline, and then that's how you can track the program, where there's areas for improvement or that are improved. Okay. So I'm going to kind of back away from these slides a little bit and speak kind of to the heart of the matter. There's different pillars to a security program, and if you look at it from a framework perspective or a compliance perspective, I mean, there is value there because you're speaking to security controls, things that if you put into place, you should presumably be safeguarded from different attack vectors. So on one hand, if you can ingest that telemetry live and correlate it to the actual controls, you're going to eliminate a lot of busy work. And AI is perfect for this job because it's looking for data and text recognition around that data to map it to just the same, that framework control. So if you can get the mapping of the telemetry to the security framework in an automated fashion, and then not only that, get the actual JSON level evidence of that control being in place, you've just cut down a ton of busy work. And it doesn't take all that much to do this. I mean, really, it's just it's an API call, and mapping that API to the respective places. I know easier said than done, but again, AI is very good at doing that. So, as people are building AI agents, this is a great use case. Maybe taking a security framework and then building an API into a technology stack that you own, that you can grant access via a service account or just a direct API call. You can start doing this in your own environment. With that said, we all know that AI is not the most accurate at times. You really need to keep it honest. And there's some ways to anchor it. One, having a really clean data set for the control framework is imperative. And then going over and kind of iterating and massaging the output from what your correlation presents. And once you kind of have this, you've got this kind of interesting data lake of controls and mappings to your actual systems, where the evidence of that control exists. But then you can start building other agents to do other things. You can check for drift over time. And of course, these agents are kind of run on a cron job. So you're getting a continuous output of evidence. So it's not static point in time. That's another real benefit here. Let's see. Okay. Well, and that was just speaking to exactly what we're just talking about. The continuous compliance, the automation piece. Once your mappings are dialed in and the APIs are mapped as well, and that correlation is established, this thing's on autopilot. It's going to continuously check it. Hopefully you've got a wrapper or a harness that you can present this data in, where not only is the control mapping present, but there's also a record of the evidence, and that's stored in in your interface or the system that you've developed around this, your harness, if you will, with some storage. And we're not talking tons of storage. We're talking because it's usually JSON evidence typically. So this is the tricky part, and I think it's not as tricky for this, but I think any AI use case is you really need to validate first. You really kind of have to. You really need to articulate your use case and determine what your outcome is, and then work backwards from there. In compliance and auditing, you really don't want to be producing false evidence or attestations that just aren't real. And if a company's trying to get to SOC 2 or SOC 1 or SOC 2 type 1, you don't want to give them a false sense of confidence that, hey, the evidence is there, and and then after the SOC 2 type 1, it's just a matter of collecting that evidence over time. It'd be terrible to get to the auditor and they find that your mappings are completely wrong and the evidence is completely wrong. So you really need to stress test this and validate AI. And I think as time goes on, this will get much easier. AI, if we look just over the past 3 months, past 6 months, it's continually getting much better. It's actually mind-blowing over the past year, the progress that's taken place. The other thing I would kind of highlight around this is, so if you can synthesize kind of what a security leader would do day to day, using the telemetry as kind of the baseline, and then I guess what I'm saying is, what do you do with that? there's a lot of different use cases you can implement that are kind of interesting. So let's say evidence comes back from a mapping saying that this isn't in place. Well, or I'm going to pivot a little bit away from just the security frameworks perspective and look at it also from a CVE perspective or a KEV perspective. If you're getting if you have access to systems you already use and you're ingesting signals around vulnerabilities, another use case might be correlating your assets into a CMDB, correlating CVEs and KEVs to those assets, of course, correlating framework controls to those assets. Once you've kind of done that holistically, the horizon even opens up a little more, because now you can start leveraging AI to prioritize things based on likelihood and impact. There can be automated risk assessments that are leveraging actual best practices around risk assessment. But I think the key thing here is that you also ratify the findings to make sure that AI is staying honest, and there's a human in the loop that's reviewing the data as well. I think at this stage that's really critical. It does open the door to executing on the findings, at kind of the runtime, but that's kind of a sticky area, and I wouldn't trust that, and I don't think most operators, in environments would trust that either. But I think that's definitely a possibility down the road, to have a fully autonomous control center from a security perspective. That's the loop is surfacing the risk, assessing the risk, proposing the next action. And today, that's where the human steps in and ratifies the proposal. And with that ratification, it could be like, hey, let's set up a task to assign it to someone, your typical ITSM kind of framework. However, down the road, once, there's more confidence around these AI systems, there's the opportunity to, like, hey, you send an agent out to go remediate this, and then you'd have a fully autonomous loop. It's kind of scary on one hand, and but kind of exciting on the other, without going into the quagmire of jobs and all that. So, but I think also you can leverage the machine learning around the actual leader's ratification of proposals, and that's in the systems I built around this, that's exactly what's in place. It's the agent will surface the risk, correlates the frameworks, the mappings, and there's other vectors that it's leveraging as well, maybe correlating the existing controls to the MITRE attack framework, things like that. Prioritizing patches based on actual KEVs that are out in the wild, vulnerabilities that are actively being exploited, and correlating that to what's in your environment. Prioritizing, hey, which containers to rebuild that contain these vulnerabilities, or actual VM nodes, etc., hosts. But over time, with enough input, machine learning again can kind of learn and synthesize a company's risk appetite. I think there's just a lot of different use cases that could be gleaned from the data that's being exposed through the systems, but also the human interaction and the human behavior interacting with the proposals that the AI is generating, if that makes sense. Okay, so So, what we're really alluding to is, being able to provide assurance around a technology stack, a company's security posture, based on their risk appetite, and prioritizing activities of the team that actually elevate the security posture in a way that's meaningful and anchored in live data. If you kind of take away this model, it's hard for me to kind of envision doing a security assessment or gap analysis kind of the old-fashioned way. It's a lot of manual work, and you have to talk to teams, you have to get access to the right people, you have to schedule it. It's a real rodeo. Just think, if you're a consultant and you're coming into a company, it's kind of the same process. You have to get the right people in place, you have to get access to the systems. Of course, there's the aspect of trust and confidence in if you build a system like this, that you don't want to, you want to give it least privilege, read access to the telemetry. So I think that's probably the biggest friction, or the toughest objection if you're consulting, is getting the buy-in with the client to allow access for your agents to read their telemetry. But just think how much legwork and busy work is reduced if you leverage AI in this fashion for this type of work. It's quite remarkable, actually. So, I guess looking at this from a 90 days perspective, 0 to 30, a 30 to 60, of course, this is going to vary by entity, organization, and, your capabilities as well. But, essentially you want to grab or complete, paint an entire holistic picture of the organization's posture. And, so I think, getting your connectors in place around cloud, identity, and your endpoint. And again, you're just reading data from existing tools. If CrowdStrike's in place, if Entra ID's in place, these all these tools support API integration. So the more access you have to the tools in place, the more complete your picture is going to be. And of course, just speaking from a compliance standpoint, there's going to be a ceiling here. And I've done, I've tried to do some leverage machine learning around what that ceiling is from a compliance perspective. But essentially anything that you have an integration for that can speak to a technical safeguard or control in a respective framework, that's great. But there's other aspects, of course, we all know that, policies, procedures, that this type of telemetry isn't going to surface. However, if you have if you're working with your AI agents in a contained environment where you can, essentially your own operational data store, where you can store other types of data like policies and procedures, or anything that can be referenced in a framework, you can do things with agents there too. Actually quite a lot, actually. But anyway, so I'll leave that on the back burner. It's really remarkable how much AI could leverage to provide the correct evidence to your security program. But if you're using only API systems integrations, look at it really from a safeguard perspective, a technical safeguard perspective, while also realizing there is opportunity to have a repository of policies that could be read and used in AI, vendor questionnaires and vendor risk management, things like that as well. So. Okay, so kind of winding this down a little bit. If you've been through an audit, you know how painful it can be, and I think as time goes on, there's talk around GRC engineering, and in a way, this kind of is that, but you're not building the safeguards into the pipeline necessarily. You're more reading what's there. So I guess I wouldn't call it an engineering effort, but it's a reduction of a ton of busy work, and perhaps being a little more precise in how the telemetry speaks to the frameworks, and how you assess vulnerabilities and how you prioritize things. So in a way, the scary part is you're kind of synthesizing what a security leader would do in an environment, and you're kind of using AI to kind of bake in that judgment as well. So with that, that concludes my talk here. Hopefully you found it interesting, and I would encourage anyone that that's doing work with AI agents to maybe tackle this as a use case. Yeah, for sure. I think that's the key thing. So when you're leveraging an LLM, I think there's some considerations to be made there. What's the organization's appetite? Because you are, and we're talking only systems information, telemetry around, what your systems are doing. Still, you're surfacing a lot of sensitive topics. So I think there's consideration about using an open weight LLM, an LLM deployed in your own environment versus a public LLM. But then again, there's safeguards through contractual safeguards using a public LLM API. So when if you're talking about confidential data, again, that's really around the company's data classification policy. Is this confidential data? I would say yes, at least confidential. But again, what's the risk appetite for the organization? Are we talking about PII? That's really not in scope for the AI use cases here. So I think there's questions that you need to flesh out with the organization, and maybe baseline those questions if you're going to be doing this for many organizations. What type of assurances do you need as an organization that's running AI agents in someone's environment to the organization itself? I don't know if that answers the questions, but an audit is point in time, but now we're moving to a continuous cadence. You're collecting evidence continuously, and then you're acting. You're kind of unleashing AI agents on that data. So, closed loop, open loop. I think that's where the focus should be. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's where the ratification comes in. You want to ground. You want to anchor that risk assessment into best practices, but you're still prompting the agent or giving it some guardrails on how it assesses the risk. And I think today, as we all know, LLMs aren't. There's room for error there. So you definitely need the human in the loop. Just to validate what it's proposing in the assessment. But I've seen over time that it's getting quite good at this. As long as you're providing enough context around it, and that's where the telemetry, speaks. You're giving the agent quite a bit of context, through that API integration. Yes, I mean that's a great question, and I think pardon the analogy. What end of the horse do you want to talk to, or does the auditor want to talk to? It's if you're getting the evidence directly from the source, and the telemetry being the source, and your methods and procedures are fairly transparent on how you gathered that. I think there's no better way to do it, honestly, because the old way was you're still going to a screen and capturing a screenshot or some form of evidence, but it's just manual. But and again, and to your point, your process, and there has to be trust in how this is being done. And if your telemetry is correlating, and kind of going back to that earlier point of validating your methods, you really have to have strong validation on your methodology, and ensure that the agents are staying in line. And you can have, this sounds kind of silly, but you can have agents kind of watching agents, if you will, or having helpers in place, depending on how you run your agents that you're deploying, and you're surfacing the telemetry. You can have helpers that kind of help keep the agents in line, shared helpers, which are just added guardrails. But if you can demonstrate this consistently, I think this is where the industry is going. So it'd be interesting to see how two different organizations kind of doing this same approach handle things. But I think over time, there's going to be some common best practices around it. That's my guess. Well, again, I think 5 years from now, I wouldn't. I'm not going to bet money on it, but I would not be surprised if it's fully autonomous. That's my guess. I just think that's how good and how fast AI is moving. And there's a lot of questions around that, but I think in 5 years, you're going to have a full autonomous loop where AI is, watching AI really, in providing, levels of attestation from a regulatory standpoint. But you also have to, as we know, AI itself is breaking through safeguards, and how do you govern AI itself? And I think with the introduction of different frameworks for AI, there's opportunity for AI to govern AI. I would hope there's still room for human ratification in that process somewhere, but I see it being much more autonomous. Absolutely. And again, I think that's where the human ratification comes in. But there are things that can assist. And if we look at how we're deploying agents from kind of a data store perspective, and the data we're surfacing to the agents, within that data store is, provides the context, kind of like your, retrieval augmentation generation view. The more data we can surface there from a RAG perspective, the more context the agent's going to have. Now, how you harness those agents is going to basically be governed by your prompting, and that essentially becomes your guardrails. But as we see that, if you give an agent an outcome, given you're asking it for an outcome, my biggest fear is what we're kind of seeing right now. How do you keep the agents in line and on task. That I think is an interesting point. How do you do risk assessment on your own AI that's doing risk assessment? Yeah, I think that hits on a nerve right there. Things are data's exploding. More and more data is moving to the edge. The users are moving to the edge. Just a lot of different forces are converging at once. So they're becoming less effective because I think things are changing quickly, and there's an explosion of data. And if you're a security leader and you have a dashboard for every tool that you oversee, whether it be an EDR platform or a SIEM platform, you're overloaded with telemetry, and it's stored in disparate places, and just the intake from a risk assessment standpoint is overloading security teams. So I don't think it's sustainable, especially as the AI footprint grows and grows and the data grows and grows. I think the only realistic path forward is to harness AI to help, in many different ways around security, but risk assessment especially, because it's tough enough to do a risk assessment with a team and in an organization that's resistant to security to begin with. But if more and more of that can take place behind the scenes, in that data is trusted and evidence is really grounded and anchored with good guardrails, that can be a huge force multiplier there. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see it as going straight to the source of truth. If you have a system of record, your data store that's evidencing the telemetry, and that's essentially what the API integration is doing. And then if you have an agent that's trained to do a specific task with that data, you're synthesizing the conventional GRC approach. You're just no longer doing it with the level of interaction a human would have between teams and individuals overseeing systems. Now it's agent driven at the actual system of record. So I think that's the biggest difference in approach, is that you're automating a lot of this behind the scenes without the human aspect, which is a conversation for another time. Yeah, I think that's a great, timely question. And it's a moving target right now. Let me say this. From what I've seen in my experience, organizations have a tough enough time adopting a framework around their security posture, whether it be an ISO or NIST or a CIS or HIPAA, PCI, that while I think it's important and getting only more important to have governance around AI, security teams are already stretched thin. So, that's where I advocate for, automating as much of this as possible. But again, now we're talking about AI governing AI in a sense, which, I think for certain elements of this framework, just especially having an inventory, if you can integrate with like a CASB tool or your OAuth connector, you're going to get signals around, hey, what AI is in place in the organization through OAuth logins, through like a CASB integration. You're going to see it from a network perspective. So I think you can leverage AI to provide some attestation around these new AI frameworks. But again, the human ratifications is definitely important. Yeah, absolutely. Well, ideally, every tool or system that the organization have, if you have tentacles into every as much telemetry as possible. If your technology stack is X, Y, and Z, and you're getting telemetry from X, Y, and Z, it kind of goes back to the, what end of the horse are we talking to? You're getting it from the system of record. Now it's just about, ensuring your agents are aligned to the respective framework and the safeguards and the language of that framework, and then also aligned to the risk of that and surfacing the evidence around that to satisfy an audit. But beyond the audit perspective, what security assurance are you providing to the organization as well? So it's kind of two lenses. We've got the telemetry to satisfy the audit, but then from the security purist perspective, is the organization actually secure? And if we can look at into the actual systems and have a North Star of what does good look like, then I think basically more is better. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's say you're doing it kind of the old-fashioned way. You've got your tooling in AWS. You've got a lot of disparate places where the data lives, and you're relying on humans to look at that data and then actually identify or correlate data to assess whether risk is present there. And a lot of times it just gets overlooked because of the immense level of data. So, identifying the risks, I think AI is really good at, especially if you can get it, have it asking the right questions of the data. Where, if the data is centralized, again, via an API integration into that telemetry, and it's collecting that data, and you're running specific questions across that data, I think based on its, the machine learning and pattern recognition, the intelligence piece is what it gleans from that data. And frankly, humans are it's just much better at assessing vast sources of data than a human can at this point. And you know this when you give it a prompt, you're like, it's what's coming out on the screen in front of you, you're just like, holy smokes, this is mind-blowing, because it's been trained across vast levels of data sets. So hopefully that answers that question. Well, I appreciate your time. This is just such an interesting topic. AI in general, I would definitely encourage you to, find your own use cases and leverage it in ways that are safe, but that can, elevate the security posture in the work you're doing. If you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, by all means. My company, BlueRadius Cyber, we do work with a lot of organizations. So if you're in need of security assistance from a compliance and architecture, an AI perspective, feel free to reach out as well.